Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome to our live session. I'm very excited to have Mike Rieser and Perry Reed from Industrial Logic here to talk about how we evaluate progress using Accelerate's 24 science-backed capabilities. So this is very cool stuff. I've really been a fan of what I've been seeing, and we've been using it at clients, and it's been very, very impactful. So if this is helpful to you, that's what we want to share. Um, as usual, feel free to put in some comments, ask some questions. We're here for 30 minutes, and so it's short and sweet, but we're going to get into some of the details about our findings and what it's been like, leveraging some of these wonderful ideas from this classic book, Accelerate. So again, thanks for coming. Don't be shy. Ask some questions, and let's have a great session. So first of all, do you want to just introduce yourselves really quickly? Mike, do you want to go first?
Yeah. My name is Mike Rieser. I've been in software since the 70s and 80s. My dad had a TRS-80, so I got into computers early. Around 2004 or so, I got into Agile, and I loved it. I got introduced to extreme programming practices, fell into test-driven development, and I loved it so much I wanted to show other people how to do it. So I've been a coach since then, been staying very technical, had different tech lead and architect type roles. But I really love helping to improve the lives of software professionals. I've been abused by certain employees or employers in certain projects. And I'm like, it doesn't have to be that way. It can actually be far, far different. I was on a team where we were able to deliver software it felt like a very comfortable, easygoing, relaxed way, but we got a lot done. And I really want other people to be able to experience that kind of software development organization.
Yeah, excellent. I'm Perry Reed, also with Industrial Logic, and similar to Mike, I've been working in the industry for many, many decades. And I've had a lot of experience in a lot of different domains, starting out in the oil and gas industry, but also working in areas of the Department of Defense and aerospace. Got involved in healthcare and was involved in 2 biotech startups, which really taught me a lot. But similar to Mike, I got exposed to the Agile movement in the early 2000s, and it resonated really well with me. Many of the things I learned from that I had experienced personally working on other projects. And so after applying it in my own projects, I saw an opportunity to start working with other teams and coaching others, and it became a real passion. Similar to Mike, it's fun when you find easier, better, more effective ways to work and be able to share those with other people. So yeah, I'm excited to be here and share what we've learned about Accelerate. It's been very helpful for us.
Okay, thank you, Mike and Perry. And if you don't know me, I'm Josh Kariuski. I'm the CEO of Industrial Logic. We've been around about 27 years, and our mission really is to help companies produce better software sooner. So that's our mantra. And much of what you're going to hear about today is very focused on things like DevOps and lean management, and XP plays a big role in this as well. It's over the many years we just find whatever really works well is what we're going to use on clients, and we're not afraid to drop practices if they don't really deliver their weight. We're not into fads, we're into results. And so this Accelerate stuff's exciting. Let's dive in. Before I show anything here on the screen, what's your experience with the book, real quick? Like, Accelerate is this classic book. Let me I'll show a photo of it so you can all sort of see this. Or perhaps Julius can add this to the stage. There we go. Okay, 24 capabilities to drive improvement. So tell us more. What inspired you to dive so deeply into this book to produce this kind of way of evaluating progress?
The authors, Forgestrin, Humble, and Gene Kim, they did a marvelous job doing a scientific analysis on capabilities, high-performing software teams and organizations were using. That might actually be a little bit of a misnomer. They actually sent out a huge number of surveys. They were able to do a cluster analysis on them without actually having any bias about what is good or bad, but just watch how these things clustered out. And they ended up in 4 different clusters. And later they were able to look at those clusters and name them high performing, moderate, low, and then ultra low. I think they finally just grouped the ultra low and the low together. Now, for me, I got a physics background, a math degree, computer science degree. If you can actually show data, and if you can actually show that something has a statistical, impact, then you start to get my attention. And so I was running into a lot of different agile transformations. Folks were curious and interested in maturity models, and the maturity models were okay, but they didn't always show a real maturity in the fact that an organization's quote-unquote mature should be able to continuously improve. When I got to Accelerate, I got to see these capabilities as opposed to maturity models working. And so your ability to take on these capabilities were also going to allow you to get better and better delivery. And I didn't have to convince folks that, for instance, I really think the high quality code will help you later. Because that was one of the things as an Agile coach and as an XPer I knew, and that is there's all these things which we know, that if you have automated testing and automated delivery, you have a real ability to start creating flow. If you have high quality, you can actually make that code base do things that you hadn't anticipated before. And so I would always have to try to convince folks of this. And when I read Accelerate, I'm like, there it is. There's the evidence that people always want. So when you can actually say, this isn't just my opinion, this has actually been scientifically shown to be impactful. And to me, it was awesome, because I finally had something I could point to, rather than just, I really, really believe this. I could actually say, no, this has actually got evidence to it.
That's huge. That's really big. And when Mike says he's an XPer, just to be clear, he's not a Windows XPer. He's an extreme programmer, and we do a lot of extreme programming around here, including all these lean and DevOpsy things. Okay, so Perry, what about your story?
Yeah, so as an Agile coach, I was working with teams, and all of the teams I was working with, they all want to be better. They want to improve their performance, improve the quality of their code, deliver value sooner to their customers. And I was always looking for ways to introduce new practices and techniques that would help them accelerate those things, improve those things. And many of the things I was recommending as a coach were from my own personal experience and my evidence of having seen them work. But when Accelerate came out, I saw basically the power of a roadmap that was based on strong science-based research. And just like Mike, I could lean not just on my own advice, my own experience, but I could reference research that came from 23,000 survey responses to 2,000 plus organizations, from 2,000 plus organizations. So it really gave a much stronger foundation for the recommendations I was already making, and made it a much more powerful engagement with the client.
Wonderful. So yeah, without further ado, why don't we just look some more at this, and so give folks an idea. Mike, do you want to kind of walk us through what we're looking at here?
Sure. The first couple, continuous delivery, and what you have is 24 capabilities that have actually been organized into 5 different categories. And this was a discovery I made in Appendix A of the Accelerate book. And I thought it just made a great summary of these are the things that are impactful. So, the blue, continuous delivery, is technical. Architecture is, of course, technical. Product and process and lean management and monitoring has more to do with how you're looking at your software code base. Are you creating a product, and how are you, what sort of metrics and delivery mechanisms are you using for that? And then lastly is cultural capabilities, which is about your organization, which I think a lot of us who have had any type of a career in software development have seen that really different organizations can behave very different. and they can get very different results from the folks depending on how they behave. So that was not left out, that was actually included, and the cultural capabilities, I think, are extremely important. And I was very happy when Industrial Logic became a leader, I think, in that psychological safety and the psychological safety workshops, because I believe that starts to drive those sorts of capabilities. Continuous delivery, these are the technical things. Do you have everything under revision control? Can you actually make a change and will it automatically get picked up by a build and everything be built, repackaged, etc.? Later you get into the idea of, can you deploy it? When you take this to its ultimate endpoint, you can have folks who can make very small changes to code, and they can actually show up in production just a few hours later. And there's just a pipeline that once you start the thing going, it's like a conveyor belt and then just delivers changes of the software to production. Some people think that sounds very unsafe, but actually all of these capabilities reinforce each other and it becomes a very safe way to operate. Let's see here. One of the other things which I think isn't here, but we also talk about with regulated industries is something called continuous compliance. Regulated industries have the problem that they have to be auditable, traceable. They have to have a lot of change management with, checks on it. It turns out if you're willing to rethink how you do it, you can actually get it almost for free from a highly automated system. And so I try to tell folks, don't try to automate your manual compliance regulatory system. Actually look at what you've got and with automation, and then just basically put the right pieces in place for that. Architecture mostly has to do with your different components that you deploy and whether or not the teams are actually enabled and empowered to work on their own servers, or whether they end up having to do everything the way an organization might dictate. It's amazing how if you give some folks autonomy, they'll find the best tools for the job. Product and process is, of course, things like, are you working in small batches? Can you create a flow of work? Are you creating a flow of value?
Yeah, and just to step in there for a second, I mean, none of these are like, as full featured as you want. I mean, there's stuff like continuous compliance. Okay, Mike Rieser mentioned that, and we've had to work with companies that are regulated, that have audits from government agencies. So continuous compliance really, something we add in to the continuous delivery. Product and process is, 4 boxes there. It doesn't mention a lot of lean startup-y stuff like validating or invalidating features before you even build them, and stuff like that. So there's more to it, but there's enough here to provide a pretty good roadmap. I want to just really quickly give some focus to a question from Michelle Cressman-Block. She says, it looks like there's an assessment of where an org is on these dimensions behaviors. What methods you use to gather that score? Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Thank you, Michelle.
Sure. I was doing a team assessment and I was trying to get an idea of how they were lining up with progress on these capabilities. I had done a survey where I created a lot of open-ended questions and I delivered the survey in person, and I ended up with a huge amount of data I had to go through in order to try to figure out where they were in progress. So I had asked a lot of subjective questions, and then I had the problem that I had to create a subjective assessment on it. After that, got the idea to turn it around and ask very closed-ended questions, create a survey for it. And it's one that can almost be run solo, so I don't have to actually proctor it. And with these closed-ended questions, we can get a much better idea from an organization about how they're doing with regard to these different things. If we think that the survey is giving us some bad results, we can always, validate them in person, asking some extra questions. But it's been a great tool to try to get an idea of where an organization is at. So these particular things are shown as progress bars. So how close are you to achieving that particular capability? Things like version control for all production artifacts is relatively easy to get over, whereas that last one, which I think is implementing continuous deployment, it's a bit more involved.
Right.
So,
yeah. And then item number 24 in the bottom right corner is support or embody transformational leadership. right? I mean, these are people's opinions. It's not that you're, somehow looking at artifacts in the organization to validate that. You're really getting opinions from people. So the surveys, Mike's mentioned that this was a little time consuming at first, right? Because it's a lot of data. We've streamlined it, and because we found it to be so valuable. And in streamlining it, we've produced our own questions for each of these 24 science-backed capabilities. And, that's always a work in progress. We're constantly tweaking it, but we just used it at another client, and it gave us a fairly good picture of what was going on there. Again, you might have questions about specific items and dig deeper into those to figure out, is this a true score or not? But it's very much, Michelle, a way that we're getting a picture of the organization to figure out where are they in this maturity in terms of their ability to be high performance. Okay, so I know that you all used this at a real client just a couple of years ago to kind of create a roadmap. Can you speak a little bit more about that? Maybe Perry, do you have any?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were working with a client, Mike and I were, and we had introduced Modern Agile as a set of governing principles. And so we were looking for what of the Accelerate capabilities did we want to focus on. And so we had also introduced to them the idea of a user story mapping. And so we actually organized the 24 capabilities and these 5 organizational categories into a user story map kind of format. And as we began working with the teams, we chose certain capabilities to focus on first. And so those were the ones at the top that are labeled in progress. And then, so we prioritize these things, these improvement opportunities with the client. We identified those things. And because we had introduced Modern Agile, we wanted to sort of cross-reference where these capabilities overlapped with what they had already learned about Modern Agile. So we use this as a guide and focused on the items you see it there at the top, with plans to move next into the items in the middle, and things that were of lesser importance for this particular client we put at the bottom. And it was really helpful for us as Agile coaches working with the teams to narrow our focus to the things that we thought would truly be impactful for this client at this time. And just like the previous slide, the client was already doing many of these things. And so, you could give them credit, if you will, for having some accomplishments, some progress on these already. So we gave them credit for the things that we felt were already in progress and the things that we wanted to add to it. But organizationally, this was extremely beneficial for us in our collaboration with the client about how to make their organization better and ultimately deliver better software sooner.
And for those not familiar with Modern Agile, you can learn more at modernagile.org. It's really just 4 principles that over the many years we've said, this is kind of important for, teams building products or services. So check out modernagile.org, and there's a very active Slack community there. And this view here was before we had the progress bars, correct?
Mm-hmm. That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So the progress bars are kind of cool because they show you sort of, how you're doing, as we saw here. And so we've been evolving this as over time. And, this is a very valuable way to interact with the customer. Did the customer like this?
Yeah, very much. We had encouraged them to also, read the Accelerate book, again, wanting it not to be, sort of the Mike and Perry show. We wanted, it to be very much based on the science that we had learned and appreciated from the Accelerate book. So, but yeah, I think the client very much appreciated a roadmap for improvement and being able to see what we were working on now and what was coming up further down the road.
Okay, so and again, feel free to ask questions. We appreciate that one from Michelle. If you have any more questions, please don't be shy. I have a question, which is, it's common to build the wrong thing, right? To build something customers don't even want or not going to use. Does this address that?
It does, actually. I'm a little bit better with the other version of the slide. There we go. Actually, under the green, product and process, number 11, it says gather and implement customer feedback. So one of the things that you'll see the Accelerate book, and a lot of other folks already know this too, and that is that you want to be able to put something out there and get feedback rapidly to be able to change what you're putting out there. And if you have no mechanism for getting customer feedback, then how are you going to do such a thing? And so this kind of brings it front and center and says, yeah, you know what, you need to be able to gather and implement customer feedback. And it's interesting because some industries have users that aren't customers, they have customers that pay them money but aren't users. And so you have to make sure that you're getting the right kind of feedback from the right folks. But in general, it looks pretty straightforward. Yeah, you gather your customer feedback.
And I think number 16 in lean management and monitoring might also be related.
That one has a lot to do with, can you preemptively know how are your systems doing? You know, are you leaning toward a time of like high activity, and will you crater and that sort of thing? So some of this is to be preemptive. Let's see, check system health is also proactive.
Yeah. I wonder if 16 also gets into like metrics, the keeping usage metrics for features.
Yes. You want to be able to feed back to the business data so that they can make database decisions about what's actually happening.
Right. Very cool. Okay, so were any of these harder than others? There's 5 major categories here. In terms of your experience in helping companies, improve with this roadmap, were any of the, could you say anything about that? What's harder, what's easier in general in your experience?
One of the one I think is most common across all of them and is also difficult is for folks to work in small batches, number 13. Everyone always wants to batch up huge amounts of stuff and send it all out in a big bang. And if they could just lead with thinking in terms of, could we do something smaller? Can we get that out sooner? Can we get some feedback on it? They would do very well. Now, I'm a big fan, of course, of the things in blue, which are mostly like technical pipeline types of things. And I know that once they get those in place, it's kind of a one and done. Yeah, you have to maintain it, but once you have it in place, it's there. You just keep using it. But some of these other ones are more of the people issue and how they think about work. Barry, I'd be interested in how you'd answer that question too.
Yeah, the big fan of the items in blue as well, and also the product and processes. The things I think that are more difficult are the organizational change, the cultural capabilities, because that relies on people being willing to change. And that, as I know both you, Josh, and Mike know, whenever we sit down with a client and are talking to them about a possible engagement or even just an assessment, one of the things we have to evaluate and help them understand is, are you actually willing to change? And changing people is hard, and some clients it's harder than others. And so I found that to be a very interesting thing. They may recognize that they need to change, but if they don't have the will and the determination to do it, it's going to be a struggle.
Great. Yeah, and I'll just note, I think that what Mike was saying earlier in terms of the blue side of continuous delivery, if you're going to move towards that, you kind of need to work in small batches, number 13, right, from product and process. There's like a Venn diagram in some sense here. These things overlap. So they do play well together, and you kind of need them together to really make this work well. And I mean, this isn't easy, right? You're talking about high performance teams getting to do all this stuff, right? I mean, most organizations don't do this, right?
No, at least not the ones that we get invited to come help.
Right. It's a high bar, and can you say more a little bit about so the statistical proof, has that helped? Right, you mentioned that in Accelerate, there's statistical proof of these things. Have you found that has helped customers to sort of say, all right, I buy it, right? This is great. Let's move towards this since it is backed by science.
Typically don't have much trouble with management. Sometimes the developers themselves, they kick at some things, and rather than just having it be my opinion, your opinion, and we can't really make any progress, I can say, well, take a look at the book. You could be the equivalent of a flat earther, or you can actually get with the science.
Right.
And so, it changes how you, I'm never so brutal, but you can actually converse with someone and say, well, look, these things have been shown to be impactful.
Right.
And there are some that are more impactful than others, and we can decide how we're going to adopt them in what order. Generally, they're independent. Some of them are definitely sequenced.
Very good. Yeah. And I know that we're using some of these in assessments. So this is what you're seeing here is part of an assessment of an actual team. We've anonymized it, of course, but Mike just recently performed this at a client, and there was very specific feedback about, for all 24 capabilities, what needed to be done to make improvements. In the few remaining minutes, or how about in a minute, can you say a little bit more about that?
Well, each of the progress bars were showing, how they weren't quite there yet. And so if they were to ask me, well, what is it missing? I'll be like, well, it's these. And so I just sort of pre-answered that question ahead of time and said, these are the things that you'd have to address for me to get you up at that, to convince you that you're actually doing that capability successfully.
Right. So it's very, very specific. You're able with these capabilities to hone in on what's missing. What do you need to do specifically, to get to, let's say, 100%. And that can then be, of course, put onto a now, later, or some kind of a roadmap, like you showed earlier.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, in each of those sections at the end of it, I put a roadmap for that particular category, so that they would know what to tackle in what order.
Right. More examples here. So, yeah, that's basically, kind of a look at, what we've been doing here with Accelerate metrics. It's definitely it's a work in process in terms of us continuing to roll this out and help companies with this. But we're finding it's very, very useful.
Yeah.
So I think Michelle has another question here. What would you focus on with the client once they've gotten to 100%? Oh, good question. Well, yeah.
Me and Perry.
Yeah. Well, one thing that jumps out to me is that the way we worded some of the questions in our survey, we were giving them credit, for example, if they were doing, for continuous integration, if they were doing a commit a day or something like that. Yeah. And clearly, that's a very low bar to meet. Are you doing something? And do team members get access to all of the code within 24 hours? Again, a very low bar to set for a standard. With teams that we've worked with, our expectations is that they are doing dozens, if not, 30, 40, 50 commits a day, and so the higher numbers, I think, would be indicative of a higher performance level or higher expectation for those teams.
Particularly also on the cultural capabilities. I mean, that's a constant work in progress. It's very rare for people to get 100% in all of those and stay that way. I mean, the organization changes over time too. So once people come and go, you've got to go back to those things. So. Well, we're at time now. So I really appreciate both Mike and Perry for joining us today. Thank you to Michelle for her questions. Thanks to Julius for helping us put this show on. And if you have more questions for us, just go to industriallogic.com. There's a contact form you can fill in if you want to learn more. And we hope this was useful. We hope you read the book Accelerate and benefit from it the way we have. Again, thank you so much for coming.